What's up, guys? Welcome to where we are going to talk about one of the root causes that I feel like really is an issue in the real estate space right now, and that is loyalty. Now, when I say root problems, I mean loyalty seems to be hard to come by in the real estate community right now, and I think that that's what every agent is really striving for. So, the question I really want to pose to all of you guys is if the root problem of the real estate business is loyalty, how do we create it? And that's where what I do really comes into play. And the answer to this question, or the solution to this problem, in my opinion, is building community. So I really want to walk through some of the steps that I encourage you guys to take in order to build loyalty and what that actually looks like. And how does that relate to how we're showing up on Instagram, or for that matter, how we're not? So let's jump into that. The answer again to the problem is we have to build communities. So, how do we build community? And this is really done through our content. Now, what I believe is an issue with our content is we are trying to reproduce content that everybody else is producing, right? So, if we go and we say, this is another agent in our market and they're doing really well, and or their perception of what they're doing on social media seems to be really good, so guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to R&D that, or I'm going to rip off and duplicate it. Well, the problem with that is that we are not creating our it factor, and we are most definitely not adding an opportunity or creating an opportunity for us to create our own lane or our own space. So with that, I really need you guys to understand that in order to build community through content, we have to create uniqueness. Now, what does uniqueness look like in a tactical aspect? Right? So, what do we actually have to do in order to create uniqueness in our space? So, if you are that person listening to this and saying, hey, you know what? This person in my market is doing well. They recorded a video about this thing. So, I'm going to go record the same video because why not? Right? It worked for them. It should work for me. I want you guys to stop doing that. And that's what we're going to talk about in this specifically, so that you guys can start to really create uniqueness and build your community. And the thing with building community too that I want to mention is every single one of you guys listening to this, your communities will be different. No two communities will be the same. And that is a good thing, right? So go find your people. And if you guys can do that, I pray that you understand the power of doing that. You guys will have a massive opportunity to differentiate yourself in a very crowded space on this platform. But let's get into the tactical piece. And this data set on your screen, right? It's funny that I'm sharing data when I'm about to share with you why I'm sharing data and how it relates to data. But I'm still going to share it with you guys anyway. And the two numbers you see on your screen, 63% and 5%. What are those numbers? What do they mean? Let's talk about those two things. So 63% is the metric for the percentage of people that say that they remember a story that they heard during a presentation. So in this particular study, and I've studied several studies about this conversation and about this topic, but 63% of people will say and have said that they remember stories over data, right? So that 5% means that 5% of people can say that they remember a specific data point or a specific statistic that they heard during a presentation. So 63% of people said they remember stories. Only 5% of people say that they remember any statistics shared with them during any presentation or keynote at all that they have ever heard. So this in here lies our solution to the problem. And that solution is storytelling. So how do we do this? Why do we do this? What does it look like tactically in our content? Let's talk about that. So this Venn diagram that you guys are looking at, this is the solution to the problem. And on the right-hand side of the screen, you're going to see passions on this Venn diagram. I'm sorry, left-hand side, not right. Don't judge me for not being amazing at left and rights. But on the left-hand side of your screen, you will see the word passion. On the right-hand side, you will see expertise. And the intersection of those two things is our content. So if you're looking at this Venn diagram, I want you to understand what this really means in a tactical play-by-play, day-to-day operation. So when we are looking at this, I want you guys to do two big things. So I want you to create a list in front of you. If you have a notebook, if you have a notepad, whatever, even if it's your phone notes on your iPhone or on your Android, pull up the notes tab and do this. I want you to write out 3 of your passions. And then I want you to write out 3 of the pain points that your ideal client has. And the pain points are really important because the pain points that someone has, or that some of your clients have, that is your expertise, right? Because your expertise is overcoming those or solving those pain points. So when it says expertise, what that means is what are the pain points of your ideal clients that you are so good at overcoming because that is your expertise, right? So on one side, I want you to list out 3 of your passions, things that you love, things that make you you. On the other side, I want you to list out 3 of the pain points that your ideal client has, because remember that the pain points that your ideal clients have, that is your expertise. That is what you are really good at solving. So we need to have that listed out. Now, the intersection of those 2 things is our content. So why am I telling you guys this? Why am I having you do this homework assignment? Here is why. In our content, we need to start sharing our passions. We need to start talking about the things that make us us. And we need to start creating content that serves specifically our community of people that we are trying to build a relationship with. Now, I'll use lots of examples here. I have a client who is a semi-professional bowler and sells a ton of homes all year long. And when we first started talking through this assignment, he was like, well, I bowl a lot. And I'm like, amazing. How can we dissect the conversation of bowling and the sport of bowling and create content about the real estate market or about the real estate transaction and the pain points that your ideal clients have in that process? How do we combine bowling and that pain point? And that's where we now are creating content. Now, how do we do that? Right? We have to use things like ChatGPT, which I'll talk about here shortly. But the point of why this Venn diagram is so important is that when we are producing content, our only goal is to create connection. That is it. Our only goal, I'll repeat that, is to create connection. We need someone to consume our content and say, me too, or dang, that is awesome, or wow, I had no idea that somebody could tell a story about bowling and how that would then subliminally relate to real estate or buying and selling. Right. Or I have another client, Sarah, right, who loves plants. And I know I've talked about her before, specifically to you guys here in this audience. But what is so incredible about Sarah is she loves plants. So how do we tie the conversation around plants and what that means to her into how we actually produce content to build her community of other plant lovers? Now that's the amazing thing about this, right? If we can create content in that connection space and we do a good job of talking about things in that connection space, what will inadvertently happen is we will have more conversations, meaning we will be producing content that people want to engage with. That is the key. So if you are looking at other people's content and you're saying, wow, that video got 5,000 views, that's awesome, cool. But is that person having conversations? Is that person having people reach out and creating messages back and forth with them? Is that person actively outbound prospecting through their platform, talking to people that they don't know around this plant conversation to scale it or amplify the opportunity that presents itself? The answer to that is 99% of the time, no, right? So when we create content in this intersection of our passions and expertise, here's how this is going to work. So you have your list of 3 passions, you have your list of your 3 expertises, aka your 3 pain points that your ideal clients have that you are so good at solving. And what we're going to do is we're going to use ChatGPT to come up with content in that intersection space or in that overlap space. So we will ask ChatGPT very candidly, can you create an analogy between X passion and X pain point? Then at the end of what we send into ChatGPT, so that initial message, we will say, this will be a 5-part series. So can you please create an analogy that is broken down into 5 parts? Then it will spit it back out at us and we will have 5 beautiful individual things listed out. Each of those 5 things, guess what? We're going to reverse engineer what it gives us and turn each of those 5 things into its own video that is 40 to 60 seconds. And it's going to tie in a passion and an expertise piece or a pain point part into this really beautiful video. And that's going to be a 5-part series. So all of a sudden we are now solving the problem of, I don't know what to be posting about. I don't know what to be talking about. And we're building our community all at the same time. right? So no more real estate talking heads, no more just word vomiting data or showcasing how busy we are, how many transactions we've done, how many listings we have active right now, how many people we have on our team, how much rev share we've made this month, right? All of those are great things, but the reality is that we have to create connection in our content first and foremost, so that when I teach you guys later on how to prospect, that it will actually work, right? So many people want to start prospecting right away, but the reality is you cannot start in the prospecting space if your content is not good. And if your content is not speaking to the personal side of who you are, because if that part is missing and someone tries to outbound prospect, right? So let's say John, for example, I'm just going to make this name up. John starts to go out and actively prospect another buyer or seller in his specific city or neighborhood, whatever, right? As we build that out. Let's say he's starting a conversation with me, Michelle, and we're talking about half marathons in our DMs. And I click on his profile and he's telling me that he's, run all these half marathons. I click on his profile and I'm like, well, I don't see any content at all anywhere about anything related to a half marathon. That connection point that we now built and that some semblance of trust that I now built with this person via DM and in our messages is now totally obliterated because he is not showing up in the capacity that he said he was, or he's not showing me that he is who he says he was. So in order for us to prospect, which is a huge, huge thing that I talk about all the time, we have to understand that our content is the horse before the whole part of that even begins, right? It's like trying to put the cart before the horse. You can't do it, right? So your content has to be there. Then we couple that with prospecting. And when those two things are working synonymously and hand in hand, we're now pouring gas on a really already roaring fire. And now we're winning, right? So in our content, we have to remember that we have to showcase who we are as people. We have to share stories, tell things about who we are outside of work and outside of selling real estate. And what does that look like, right? So the example of bowling that I was telling you guys about, on one side, we have bowling as a passion. On the other side, one of the pain points that my ideal client, or that my client wrote out as one of the pain points for his ideal client, was indecisive people. So he said one of the pain points for his clients is that they're indecisive. They feel overwhelmed with so many options, so many houses out there to choose from. How do you choose? Also, how do you make sure that you're choosing it wisely with the market the way that it is right now, right? So that's his pain point that he's going to be using, and the passion that he's going to be using is bowling. So we will type in ChatGPT, can you create an analogy between bowling and indecisive people, semicolon, explanation of what indecisive people means, right? So about a sentence or two of what indecisive people means to my client, Chad. And then at the end of that paragraph, we're going to say to ChatGPT, can you create a 5-part series out of this? Send, right? That's when we're then going to get these 5 really beautiful pieces, and we're going to reverse engineer each of those 5 things into its own video of 40 to 60 seconds. Now we're going to also couple that with where do we record this content? So my client, Chad, who happens to be this example of bowling, he is actually going to record all 5 of these videos in the bowling alley, right? So we're going to literally get him in his element, create content about something that he loves in the place where he loves, or in a scenario that he loves, and the content will really shine through. And a lot of times what will happen when we do this really well is our audience will be like, dang, I had no idea where you were going with that, Chad, but that was so good, right? Like, and he's, in a video holding a bowling ball, having this conversation. It's just more intentional content. It's more personal content. All of the bowling lovers out there that are going to see that are going to resonate and connect with it. And that is how Chad will win in creating connection, which then leads to conversation. And the bottom line, guys, all of this comes down to one thing. We know that our goal is to create conversion. So if we are not building connections with people, we are definitely not going to be in conversation with them. If we're not in conversation with people, you can certainly kiss connection. You can certainly kiss conversion goodbye. So connect in your content. That connection that we are building through what we share becomes the foundation of how we then prospect later on, right? Our content first. Don't put the cart before the horse. Then we start prospecting once our content is a well-oiled machine. And that prospecting includes talking about all of these passions and things that we enjoy. And then the content that's already now well-oiled we know that if we prospect well, right, and we're talking about the passion things and our content is resonating and sharing those passionate things or things that we're passionate about, that connection is now sealed, right? We are now bonded with the people that we are talking about. So your content is the framework for how we prospect, and literally, quite honestly, the framework of conversations that we will then be having when we start prospecting. And if we do that well, then we will take off, and not only creating more connections, but we'll be having way more conversations. And the reality is that you guys are in the sales business. If you're not having conversations, you're not converting. So we have to have more conversations. How do we then peel that layer back? We have to have more content that speaks to who we are outside of selling real estate and who we are as humans. And in doing that, we have to focus on one thing and one thing only: creating connection through the art of storytelling. I hope that was super helpful, and I'll see you guys the next time I join you.